Here's a tip. Wait, let me do it again. Here's a tip for living your best life. Stop into your local art galleries, see all the beautiful color, take a moment to view the world through the eyes of an artist. I decided to visit the Samuel Owen Gallery in Palm Beach, as you can see.
You're watching All That Buzz with Victoria. This time, Vicky is looking into her own little Art Basel. For those who can't get to the big Art Basel in Switzerland, Vicky has her focus on some of the hottest up-and-coming artists.
So this is such a beautiful gallery. I love it. And I want to know, is there an underlying focus to the kind of arts that you collect and what you keep here, I guess, for your clientele, also the people that live here, and whatever you could tell me about that.
Absolutely. So Samuel Owen Gallery Palm Beach is in its third season here in Palm Beach, Florida. In our other locations, Greenwich, Connecticut, Boston, Massachusetts, and Nantucket, Massachusetts, we share one inventory that's mainly mid-career emerging pop contemporary artists. So artists from all over the world working in all different sorts of medias with an underlying visual theme of colorful, really uplifting, happy art with positive messages. Most of our collectors are residential collectors, so it's artwork that they want to wake up and see every day and something that makes them smile.
Thanks, Cayla, for joining us here at the Samuel Owens Gallery. And I love your art. Can you describe your process to me?
Yes. Thanks for having me, first of all. I really appreciate it. So I think that a lot of times people want to put art into specific categories, right? Whether it's the academia of it, obviously we have a wide spectrum of art, from modern art, expressionism, illustration, digital. And for me, to describe my art, I think that it's a culmination of a few different genres. I think it has some neo-Dadaistic tendencies. It's also very graphic, and obviously in a blanketed sense, it's contemporary. You know, it's definitely not part of the old masters. It will be one day, maybe. But it's not part of, like, you know, a more quintessential older craftsmanship that people think of when they think fine art. Obviously the world is kind of shifting a bit with what the definition of fine art is. And so I think that for me to try and put my work into one description is a little bit difficult, but it's definitely very multifaceted.
What inspires you to develop a piece? Like, what inspires your work?
Well, so I worked in advertising prior, and I wanted to be a creative director forever. So making the ideas was all I ever really wanted to do, to be honest with you. So coming into the art world in that way, I did do graphic design previously, and it comes a bit naturally to me. And of course, when I first started as a fine artist, I had tons of ideas. And sometimes people ask me, do you ever think you'll run out of ideas? And I'm like, no, I don't think so. But I know some people do have, you know, writers get writer's block, people have a creative stop that happens. For me, I feel most myself and most at home when I'm being creative. So I've learned to just kind of always let that faucet be turned on, so to speak. But in terms of ideas and how I'm inspired to do this and how I come up with all of these things, you know, every time I'm making a piece of art, it's never a singularity on its own. It's usually part of a larger series or collection. So the series or collection has an overlying theme, right? And then each piece within that set kind of fulfills whatever that overlying theme is in its own, you know, special kind of pockets, so to speak. So usually when I'm coming up with ideas, it starts with one main idea, and then everything trickles forward from that. All of the intricacy in the drawing that's in a lot of my, you know, signature designs, that came to me at an earlier age. And usually, I have to be honest, a lot of people are like, do you pre-plan what you're gonna put in there? like maybe I'll have an idea once or twice, or I'll write down something I don't want to forget to do on one of them. But usually everything is being done off the riff. So as long as I have the overwhelming idea and theme of what the piece is, my mind can usually jump between, you know, literature or musical references or things, and then it all gets brought together. It's just kind of how my mind works, I think. That's what you're looking at for the most part, is like an entire pocket of my mind.
So do you ever get frustrated? It doesn't sound like it. It sounds like you pre-plan and like you don't just free paint or free create. It's
The
like you
pre-planned part is, so each theme and each piece is pre-planned for what it probably will look like. But my actual signature designs that are what defines me and what I'm known for, those come naturally, just off the riff. So it's something, do I get frustrated? Of course. I think that in a process, in the creative process for anyone, you always have some sort of, you know, you have your peaks and your valleys. So you have parts that you enjoy doing more, and then ones that really just like wear you out. Of course I get frustrated, but in the end, I think that without that frustration and without that pull of the emotion, it's not really as rewarding when the works come together at the end and they're finished. So of course I get frustrated just like anybody else, but I don't necessarily hate that factor.
So do you find some things like anticlimactic? Like do you get that sort of like a terrible feeling when things are over, when you finished it? Do you look at art and say, okay, this is done, like, or do you say I have to continue?
Ooh, okay. No one's actually ever asked me that. I think that people close to me, if they've ever come, you know, to my home, which is where my studio is, maybe they've sensed that I have those emotions, but no one's ever actually asked me. That's a great question. Yes, I know what you mean. I think there's some artists who look at a piece and like, you know, there's some, I think, it might have been Van Gogh said that he like never felt a piece was done, even when it was done. Like, you know, there's artists who feel that way, like, oh, I should have done more. And of course, as a professional and it being my career, I do like to grow. I constantly want to have that growth. And of course, I look back at some works and I'm like, you know, wow, I could have probably done this, like, or added something to it. But I have a sense of satisfaction that a piece does have a start and a finish for me, because then I'm growing, right? And then I can look back and learn from what I've made. I always feel a deep sense of satisfaction, especially, you know, we're sitting amongst a big collection of my work from my most recent solo show.
I love it, I love it.
I'll tell you this, the satisfaction is always there, but when I'm finished, after I'm so go crazy, at times I actually get quite anxious because I feel like I need to be doing things. And when that kind of comes to a slowed stillness a little bit after, you know, the work's been created before it's about to be shown even, there's like this kind of still quietness. I think that makes me go a little bit crazy. I'd rather just keep going, you know, with the momentum, but it's also probably healthier that I take a little break in between.
You know, it's interesting that I didn't remember, I read your bio and I know about you, but it's interesting how you talk about that you come from the advertising world. So I'm thinking like a little, explain to me some of these pop culture
references,
and then we'll get into the other Pantone things after,
okay.
Which is pop culture now.
Yes, it is.
It didn't start out as pop culture, but it kind of is.
It did not, but it is now, of course. I do tend to have like I have graphical technique and style that came from working in advertising, but I've obviously let that pervade into my artwork.
And how could you not, really?
Yeah, it's part of who I am, you know, and I always enjoyed that transition. I mean, I'm 32 years old, so I was really part of that big transition where we did go into a full digital age. I still had the good sense, and I feel lucky that I still had to write on paper and have the more technical old school skills, so to speak, but I think that you need that kineticness before moving into digital era. And I was there to kind of see it happen where we had Photoshop or Illustrator, InDesign, like all of that came around. And so I think a lot of my work mixes both. I always like to say that it has a style that's like a neo-vintage, something old to it, but also feels very new. And I've kind of let that pervade any creative work I've done over the years, even when I worked in advertising and I did print ads and stuff, so.
Because it's a very tangible, touchy, feely kind of, it's art.
Yeah, it's art.
It's art.
Some people don't think it's art. I've had people say that too.
It's very,
It's subjective, right? That's what art is. So you're not doing everything right, and you're not doing anything right if someone isn't already trying to pick at you and break you down, you know? It's
Right,
good.
like some
You're
people-
upsetting someone, and that's
Right.
important.
Someone feels that a vase is a picture for water or tall flowers. Other people say it's a sculpture, it's a piece of art.
Yeah,
So I get
course.
that. I get that. That's true. Is there anything else that you'd like to add about this artwork before we get into the other?
No, actually, I don't think. I mean, I could say a lot about the series itself, but this tends to be. This is kind of rounding out about 7 years of me working full-time professionally as a fine artist. And I think the one thing I will say is I'm glad that I ended with this body of work from, you know, I'm coming up to like a decade of working in this career. And I think it was really kismet that it happened this way. I normally, as I said, make series of work, and I will do about 10 to 12 pieces in each run, so to speak, right? I could do 10 or 12 pieces, and then I'll do another run, but it's all the same series. This, I pushed myself mentally and physically, because it's 26 pieces in my first go at it. And they are large-scale versions of Loteria cards, which there's 54 of those in the actual deck. So I have made the 54 full designs digitally, but now I guess the next 28 will come around and be made after these go to whatever loved homes or places they go to, you know?
I love that real Birk. I'm going to take one. I'm going to take the real Birk, art piece, I guess, because I see you walk in the Birkin.
The real Birk, fake Birkin, yes, yes. So actually, one of my good friends, he's an artist, and he's engaged to one of my best friends from growing up. And people call me Birk, right? I'm Cayla Birk. And both of them always call me Birken Bag. They're always like, hey, Birken Bag. And for me, it was nice, right? They're equating me to something of like high value and eloquence. I didn't really think.
Pop culture.
And pop culture, right? So from them, they always said that. And one day I thought, well, you know, they call me Birken Bag. I think I want to make a fake Birken bag that says fake Birkin, like real Birk on one side, because I'm Cayla Birk, I'm the real Birk, and fake Birkin on the other side. And let me tell you, every time I bring it anywhere, someone stops me. Even if they see the side that says real Birk, which is funny. There's something that draws them to it.
Piece. It's great, it's great.
Yeah.
I love it. Okay, so here comes the big question. So tell me about your work with Pantone and the colors. I mean, I know it's not really Pantone references, but where did you get your numbering system from?
Okay, so first of all, I just want to say that when you first contacted me to do this interview, I really believe in manifestation. And there's a lot of things that I put out into the world and have always wanted to have in return. And one of those big things was always to speak to someone who in some way was related towards Pantone stuff.
Really?
So yeah, and that was one of my first big series that really pushed my art into a realm where it was being collected by higher end people, and it really was a big thing for me. The series is called Birk Tones, right? Because they're not real Pantones. But okay, so for that series, when I did them, as I said, I worked in advertising. And I think a lot of people, you know, you mentioned before that Pantone didn't start as something pop cultural, but it's moved its way into it. I think that also came with globalization, right? A lot of people, when I made that series, they would ask me, well, what's a Pantone? And I would tell them pan meaning world, tone meaning color. And my best example was always that if you have a designer in China who is designing for McDonald's, and then one here in America, and they're working on a project from across the world, they need to know exactly what shade of red and what shade of yellow are going to be fluid across all the things, right? Because it's marketing, it's design, it's everything, and it's if the red and yellow from a McDonald's is a little off, someone's going to know. We are familiar with it, right? Colors really breed a lot of memory.
It's a life, right?
It's a life. And so when I decided to make large-scale versions of Pantones, I knew I wanted to have a play on colors and what the colors say. And you know, a lot of us associate colors with things, not only memories, but also things in life, pop culturally. So that's when I did that whole full series. I've done quite a few, but you know, an example would be I made a black Pantone, and it was called Johnny Cash, right? He's the man in black. And what you asked me about the numbers. So I don't like to do anything the easy way, Victoria. I like to go the extra mile.
You're an artist.
I'm the artist, yes, I'm the artist. That's what I do. But I also am a little bit of a psychopath. I think that everything has to have like a little bit of meaning, and it has to be meticulous. So when I was going to make the first, big push at the series of the Birk tones, I obviously knew that Pantones are assigned numbers, right, as you know, you're very familiar with. But I didn't want to just throw together random numbers. That seemed a bit trite. Like, what was the point if I just threw together a bunch of random numbers? So I decided, okay, well, maybe I can do like an alphanumeric cipher where numbers equate to letters and then they say something. Okay, I thought, I'm going to do that. But then I thought, well, how are people going to be able to decode it? Everyone has like, you have a decoder usually, or some sort of thing you follow, right? The chapter of the book, the line of the page, the whatever, for people to figure out these kinds of codes over time. So what I did was I made spray paint cans that were Pantone spray paint cans, and on the bottom, the barcode tells you what numbers to plug in, and on the bottom, it helps you to decode. So they all secretly say something in the numbers.
That's fabulous.
Thank you. I think so too. It started a big trend with me. After that, I went on to do a periodic table of elements, and I hid things in that atomic weight. I also went on after that to I've done large scale versions of fortune cookie sheets, and the lucky numbers also spell out something. So anytime I can fit it in, I do.
That's really great. Is there anything else that you would like to add, something I forgot to ask you? I think you've really kind of explained everything to us.
That's good, I'm glad.
I'm hoping.
I don't think that there's anything. I guess I would rather have a question for you though.
Okay, what is that?
Do you think, growing up as the daughter of the person who invented Pantone, do you think that color plays a huge part in your life, or you've become almost a little immune to it because it was so encouraged? Does that make sense?
It's a part of my life. I mean, I basically cannot have one yellow. I basically cannot have one green. I'm in my apartment that overlooks the ocean, and I was having a hard time with the chairs, the blues that they chose for the chairs. So I was like, there's the ocean water, how could you do that? How could you find out blue? Because there's so many blues, there's so many greens.
Of course.
There's like 16 million greens on the computer, so I forget how many the human eye can see, but it's just part of me. It's part of me. Like even when I chose this shirt, when I look around, everything.
You see the shades of everything. Yeah.
And how my hair looks. I get my hair colored. If there's a little too much red in it, a little too much.
Your eye's been now trained to it.
Yeah.
I think that to be honest with you, I was glad that my Birk Tone series was one of the first to catapult my career because it trained my eye to color in a way that I thought I already had it figured out, Oh, I know what, and I did have the basic understanding of complementary colors and things like that, but when I did that Birk Tone series, I remember nitpicking over the smallest thing, I did a large-scale purple Pantone, and it was called the color formerly known as purple, and it was all about prints.
Right.
I must have gone through 80 different purples. Like, oh, that's not the right one. Oh, but that's not the right one. And I struggled a lot in the beginning with that first set. And then I did 2 to 3 more runs of them. And after that, I could see it was becoming easier for me. I could spot right away whether I knew that was going to be the right color or if it needed to be shifted just a little. And I think with the digital age now, it's so easy. You can just select any color you want, right? Like you have this vast amount of possibilities. Whereas when you're dealing with paints and spray paints and other things like that, still we are limited, You don't have every color available. You do digitally.
But
thanks to Pantone.
the color you see is not always the color you get on digital.
Of course,
color.
between print, the difference between digital and print too is
it's a whole other show. It's a science, it's a whole science. I've been around it forever, but with the advertising, you picked it up right away.
It comes naturally a little bit, but it doesn't mean that there isn't room for improvement. Always room for improvement.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
So enlightening too.
Oh, good. I'm glad. I really enjoyed speaking with you.
I love your work.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Are you kidding me? It's a pleasure, honestly.
All right, thanks.